there.
Well, good morning, Liberal Kansas, Southwest Kansas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and all other places where you tune in to get your news and views from the middle of America. Sorrel with the Leader in Times on Monday, July 31st, the last day of July. And it's warmed up here at the end of the month. We did break the streak on Friday, did not get to 100 degrees. So the days of over 100 started over Saturday and Sunday, and we'll see if Monday makes it. Did go out to the food truck. I think we all three made it out there to the food trucks on Saturday. Picked up some eats over there. You had some. What was your favorite?
Oh, I don't know. You know, it was all different and not too bad. The only thing was that I didn't get one of those jalapenos.
Texas Twinkies.
They was having a little problem with getting the electricity cranked up so they could build them things, and so I decided, well, rather than waiting around until they figured out what was going on with the electric, why, I told Carolyn, I said, well, we'll just go back to the house and we'll come back later. And so about 4 o'clock we went back, and sure enough they were operating, but guess what? They were out of them. So I didn't. That was the thing I was looking forward to the most. Just was that. But we had some other stuff, and wasn't too bad.
I did. My wife did get Sticks, the Brazilian food truck, and I think it continued to be a fan favorite. The line continued right there. I think that maybe you guys got that. What stood out to you?
Well, I like the Brazilian Steakhouse was really good, and I got Jim's Texas Twinkies, so
I'm glad you did.
I beat him to it. They were good. A little bit of heat. I wasn't as hot as I thought they might have been. The peppers were good, but the cream cheese they had inside was good. And you can't go wrong with bacon. I mean, that's when you build something with bacon, it's always going to be good, no matter what you got. So those were what we tried.
Well, and I think that it filled the park up nice. There were other things there. There's some kids games going on, and bouncy houses, and other vendors selling some other products and stuff, and even some groups. I know that I believe the Black History Committee was there, the Martin Luther King, selling some raffle tickets. They're raising money for scholarships, and so it was quite a day at the park. And I think the park was a good choice as far as you had trees, you had some shade. You could always find somewhere to go to escape the heat a little bit, when not knocking it on Kansas Avenue. It was probably good they did that one early in the year in June, but there is nowhere to find shade on that. I mean, you are exposed.
Yeah, it wasn't really too bad, in the shade. It wasn't bad. There was very little breeze. Yeah. If there had been a little more breeze, that would have helped, but it wasn't bad in the shade. I don't know, 92, 93. It wasn't too bad, but I did see our good friend Larry White up there. He came down. I guess he probably had a little duty at the church yesterday, and so I visited with him a little bit. And I don't know, it was a good event. And I did have somebody say, maybe they ought to think about incorporating that with a flea market one of these times, create a little more activity. I thought, well, that wouldn't be too bad. I've watched those flea market flip thing on TV. If we could create something like that, that might be rather interesting to kind of incorporate that around the area. But I thought the park was a great place for it. I know Damian said that he didn't particularly like that because there was too much space between trucks. But if they could fill that in with some other stuff, and they had a good variety of vendors. There was a lot of other places. I know Carolyn got a drink at one of them that was out in the grass, and not from the food truck. So, I think all in all, I think it was well attended, and it seemed to me like there was a lot of vehicles and a lot of people walking around. So, I think it was another good success.
Yeah, and I don't mind the trucks being spread around a little bit. I mean, you walk around the park a little bit. That's not the worst thing that you can do. And
yeah, it was.
When you walk around outside, you might get some hay fever or some other things like that. I get a little of that when being outside, but no, I think that they spread them out so that you can really see, and that they could always put them side by side and
Sure.
squeeze it in if they wanted
Yeah.
to, but I didn't mind it, and I thought that you could tell that there was a little more variety than the downtown one.
Yeah.
And like I say, I started there early, and so a couple of them weren't quite open yet. I wanted to see that soul food one, but it hadn't quite got ready.
Well,
I knew, like I said to the folks, and I lived by it. I said, you better get there early if you really want to get what you want, because
Yeah.
they sold out so much downtown before. So, and at 9 o'clock or so, dusk, whenever you want to say that, they showed the Jesus Revolution and had more than 100 people there to watch that. So, that's good. And I saw they already had the big screen set up before
Yep.
the whole event took place that day, so they were ready to go.
Yeah, well, the wind wasn't blowing 40 mile an hour like it sometimes does too. That was, it wouldn't hurt if it had been a little more, because that breeze was valuable. That breeze and shade. But anyway, it was a fun event, and give a lot of folks a lot of things to do. There was lots of cars around there, people coming and going, most of them coming when we were there. We got there right at 11, and there was not a great deal, but by the time we left, why, it was beginning to fill up pretty fast. So anyway, it was a neat event. Look forward to the next one. We'll see where they're going to have it.
Friday night
I
to
think it'll be at the park again, I believe, what they said.
and well, they're going to be moved around town. I thought the next one was at the Southgate Mall parking lot.
The way I read from Damien on Facebook, they was going to be back at the park. But
Light Park
I don't know. So
or a different park?
it just said at the park, so I assumed it was going to be Light Park. But
We'll catch up with them. We got a month. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. But
we
I know
only
that
got 3 weeks.
he had mentioned that they wanted to hit all areas of town
Yeah.
with the food trucks and that. So we'll have to get a wrap up from him and see if they checked the numbers on this one. How many did they have, and the vendors, how did they do this time around? And obviously the word got around, this is something that you want to go to, because there's still a lot of people, like you said, finding a space to park to get in there was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, we parked clear up on over by on the street there in front of the west side of the fire station. And then we had to walk all the way across to the southeast corner to that one that didn't have the jalapenos when I got there. And then all the way back. Walking over there wasn't too bad, but I did learn one thing: I'm not sitting on the curb anymore. I sat down on the curb, and we had our sandwich and one thing and another, and went to get up, and guess what? That curb was a lot lower than a chair seat. Anyway, I had to kind of roll over. Somebody should have had a video of that. That would have been interesting. But
So I saw,
Anyway.
I don't know who it was, but some group had put out some tables and chairs under the trees and stuff. So
Yeah.
I thought, that was,
yeah, there was
Thank
ample
them.
tables. I was just too lazy to walk, and I told Carolyn, I said, well, I'll just sit down here on the curb. That'll be all right. And so we did. Well, that was all fine and good, except when we got ready to get up.
Yeah.
I have to check with Rex and see how they did with the snow cones, because it was a warm one,
It was
and I'm
warm.
sure snow cones looked
Yep.
pretty good that
Yep.
day. And I bet you, as long as that thing could just keep shaving ice, it was shaving ice. And nice variety. Again, there were some new ones. Went and checked out some of the new ones. I was about to hit up the cookie truck, but I had already just got my donuts, and I felt, I better not overdo the sweets. But the cookie truck or wagon looked pretty good too. And
Well, you didn't have to eat them cookies yesterday. You could have saved them till the day or tomorrow.
yeah. And so dessert ones like that, barbecue, hot dogs, Brazilian steak. The Hawaiian guy was back. I mean, just a full variety.
Yep.
And even hamburgers.
Yeah,
Even
hamburgers.
tacos. Didn't you have a
No,
taco?
Yeah, I had Navajo taco, on deep fried bread. And
So what's the difference between a taco and a Navajo taco?
Well, I think it's just the shell. Oh, this one
Isn't
was
it on
just
fry
that.
bread?
Yeah, it's on fry bread.
Oh.
Yeah, yep. And it was pretty good. The only thing was missing, I could have used a little bit more hot sauce. But other than that, we got along fine.
Art and I went down to Rincon Latino on Friday. They were having their kind of grand opening. They rebranded it. It used to be
Yep.
called Olay. They changed the name and all that. And so we went in and we did a little video. You can watch that down below if you want to see about that place. But it was good food. I mean, it's kind of like a Chipotle, where you go through and you pick what you want, and they'll put it on a bowl or a taco or anything like that, and so you can get what you want. And I'm telling you what, that stuff was pretty good. He got like a flight of tacos, little tacos, but you know, I want this kind of meat on this one, this kind of meat on that one, this kind of meat on this one, and he had that. Now he had some kind of, I know it's a little bit different community, the Latin community, some kind of a milky white beverage or something. What do they call that?
I don't know what they call it, but we were up at that Mexteca the other day, and I noticed there was a couple of older ladies, and they ordered that, and it came in a quart jar.
Yeah.
And they had one, and then they had another one, and then they ordered another one and drank about half of that one. And I thought, holy cow! And on top of that, they ate a plate full of food. And wow! But anyway, it's some kind of rice. The way the lady up there described it, it's made out of rice, and they, I don't know, grind it up or do whatever they do, and then they put in some evaporated milk, and then they flavor with almonds and I don't know what all. So somebody knows how to make that needs to come see me, because I had a little sample of that, and it's pretty good stuff.
So we'll have to get with Art and let him tell us a little bit more. But it's at Rincon Latino. It's right next to Arby's, right there. Guess what that means is the corner. The Latin corner is the translation of that. And so I'd go check that out. It's good food, good weekend of food here in the community. And then the BJs on Friday night, in the regular season at home with 11-5 win over Dodge City, and two of our young guys, high school guys here, 17 years old, got to pitch. Brooks Kappelman pitched 3 innings and did a good job. And then Zayden Martinez pitched after him. So that turned out well. So yeah, I mean, it was a good way to end the weekend for Liberal. And so we had a pretty good weekend there. Got the mayor coming on in. What we're going to do is we'll go to a break, and we'll be back with the mayor right after this. Fall off the bone ribs, dripping with our signature barbecue sauce. Tender pulled pork and brisket smoked to perfection. All served with family recipe home-style sides. It's all waiting for you at the Brick House Barbecue and Brew. Open 7 days a week, your barbecue appetite can be satisfied anytime for lunch or dinner. Brick House serves full dinners, combos, sandwiches, and take-home packs. Enjoy a variety of brews on tap or a mixed drink. Shaken, not stirred. Give your taste buds a treat at Brick House Barbecue and Brew, 24 East 2nd Street in Liberal. Like us on Facebook and see our full menu at brickhouselk.com. All right, well, we've got 2 guests here with us today. We've got City Manager Rusty Varnado, and we've got Mayor Lara with us. So we appreciate you guys coming in this morning. We were just talking a little bit about, Food Truck Saturday, second one, Light Park. Light Park was alive. A lot of people over there, and so we appreciate being able to use the facilities in the community like that and bring them alive. I haven't talked to Damien or anybody to get any wrap up from that. You got any info? Were you able to go?
So I went. I got there about 12:30. We walked around for about. I got there about 1. We walked around for about an hour and a half, I guess. It seemed to be well received again. It'd be nice if we could get more local vendors to join us. Having the novelty once a month is nice, but I think it's important that even if our brick and mortar restaurants want to bring a catering setup and sell their stuff. I think that would be a nice way to kind of showcase some of the stuff that we have in town. I know that a lot of the brick and mortars are not happy about the festival, and I understand their point. You know, it's a two-edged sword for us, but the public seems to enjoy it. The next one, I believe, is at Fellowship. It was supposed to be at Southgate. Light Park is the emergency area in case it's too hot, because you know both Southgate and Fellowship are straight on concrete and asphalt, so it's going to be pretty warm for the next one. But you know, I think we have some refinement to do, just like we did with the one downtown, to make it more inclusive and kind of a better event. But overall, I think everyone enjoyed it. I didn't stay for the talent show.
Well, no, I was in Wichita for our leadership summit, so I didn't make it back in time to attend, but I've been messaging with Damien and checking everything that just been going on Facebook to see how and everyone reacted, how many people were there, what's been going on. And the only thing we know for the August one is that the registration is open, so I definitely would encourage everyone to start signing up for that, and that it's for August 19, because like Rusty said, we have Light Park in case it's too hot, but they did want to get it out to different locations.
I thought the trees did make a difference, and walking on grass versus walking on you know, the pavement, thought that was a plus. I mean, I do think it's a park type of event. You know, and I know this is our first year doing anything like this, so hopefully, you know, there's probably a group or a committee that will evaluate things as they go and see what they like and what worked out better and what they can improve on. But I kind of call it like a carnival. I know some people are a little upset because they feel like it competes, but this a carnival does too. I mean, if the carnival comes, maybe fewer people go to the movie, maybe fewer people go out to eat one evening or something like that. But it also is a staple of communities to have a little something that comes from the outside to be a little bit different. I did have Freddy's ice cream, by the way. You talked about local ones. Freddy's brought over some coolers and brought over some yogurt, or what do they call it? It's not yogurt.
Frozen
it's
custard?
Custard, yeah, frozen custard. And so I think it's open to anybody. I think if you have a local place and you want to put something together, put up something portable or take some food over, I bet you they'll let you come and get some food out there. So yeah, of course I went also this weekend and ate at the Brick House and Billy's. I mean, I still did my rounds and ate the local folks too. So it doesn't replace it. It just, I think, complements it for once. I did meet R. David Thomas once. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he started Wendy's. And it was actually at an entrepreneurship camp at Wichita State. One of the things they told us was that while they compete for business with other chains, they all seem to benefit more by having options out there. If you were a community that had one or two restaurants, people would get fatigued at just eating those places. But as they have choices, they tend to go out and eat more often. So I think it's good that, you know, you get people out of the house, get them eating, get them trying some other things. You know, sometimes they might even say, I'm not saying this happened, but they might even say, you know, I think this place in town, it's a little bit better than this, or something where you can say, you know, hey, I like some of the things you have. Now you may say, we don't have this in town and this is pretty good. So, you know, maybe you learn, maybe someone ought to offer something like that or start something like that. So I know there's no win, in some cases, like, you can't win them all because there's always going to be somebody. But I think doing some things different doesn't hurt. So I appreciate that you guys are working with that to try to do some things a little bit different. I think what today is election eve, one more day till the primary tomorrow, and so not much you do. I mean, this is a county operated election, right? So
Yeah.
the city really doesn't play a role in it.
No, we just sit there and wait and see who the top six are. And I was a little surprised when I went and voted. I voted the first day of early voting, and I thought that we were voting for 6 people, so it shows how educated I am on our election system. But, so you pick your top 3, and then the top 6 vote getters total will move forward. So you're not going in there to vote for 6. So you really, when you go, just make sure that you got the 3 in your head that you really want to be in office, and don't think that you get some extra time to divvy through the candidates.
Yep. Or you can vote for one, or you can vote for two, or you can vote for all three of them. Just
Yeah.
kind of depends on, what you think.
Now, that's the only question you had, right? That was the only thing on the ballot.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
So it's in and out, probably.
It took me longer to chit chat with folks in the building than it did to vote. Yeah.
So when you have an event like you guys had up here at the park, obviously that affects traffic flow and things like that. Do you guys have to do anything different with that? I mean, obviously the park isn't built, and it would be ridiculous to try to have a parking lot for that many people for the occasional event. So you just got to find a place to park along the streets and then walk on over. No problem with that. But does it affect you guys any? Have to do anything different for those things?
I think the biggest impact was on Adventure Bay since it was the buyout sponsor.
Okay.
When I was in the park around 2 o'clock, Matt Quint, the rec director, told me there were over 300 kids in the pool, which is that's a lot. And then they were swarming in. So the city has the lot between the fire station and Walgreens, and then we've got some street parking. But I think the businesses across the street, the El Ranchito, the other Mexican place, Marisco's and Kinsinger, and then El Can's parking lot kind of took the brunt of the crowd.
Yeah, and right there along the west side of the park, that street parking fills up, and which is, like I say, it's a good thing to have when you know something's going good, using up the parking and things like that. So that's always good for the community. Just the other day, you had Bazaar Days, which brings some more traffic to some of the retail businesses around town and that kind of a thing. So I know that obviously with the rain and everything, mosquitoes has been a bit of an issue this summer, but how have you guys been able to address that? I mean, I know that's asking the impossible, because of all the standing water and things like that, but I'm sure no one's called and asked you about that.
So they spray every 3 to 4 days depending on wind and rain. And then my understanding is the mosquitoes have a 10-day hatch cycle, so when we get a big rain, you can expect a big influx 10 days after that. So Bruce and the Parks Department kind of look at the weather right around that time, and that's when they gauge whether it's the 3rd day or the 4th day that they're going out to spray.
I was out at the ball game the other night, and I thought it was pretty good. I've always figured, I bet you they'll probably fog this area, probably since it's a game night. I bet you they hit this thing sometime through the day, but it wasn't a problem out there at all. I just know like some of the areas of town where there are some open fields and things like that, where the water has really caused some lush vegetation, things like that. Probably are there certain areas where it's worse than others?
The golf course is bad, so I can tell you anything with a lot of grass and a lot of trees, it's going to be rough. I don't really notice them at my house, and we live up north by the lake, so that doesn't seem to be as big an attraction as kind of wooded areas. And I can't speak for the other parts of town like what they're seeing, but I know on over there where I live and then around City Hall, I don't think it's that bad. But when they're in force at the golf course, I mean, it's like I watched Independence Day Resurrection yesterday because I'm preparing for the alien invasion. They're already here, and just the swarms. That's what it's like if you get out on our golf course, kind of out there under those trees.
Well, I did talk to Brad Beer about how they kind of handle a lot of those processes, and I mean, they can spray all they want and get many areas of town good, but like the golf course that isn't on a primary road, only so much of that fog will go and flow over there. Same thing is if you have a tire with just a lot of water in your backyard, you're going to be calling talking about those mosquitoes just being terrible in your yard, and for some reason your neighbors might be okay. And it's just because you have to go out. If you have a pot with just a little bit of water in there, you need to take that out, or you're going to have mosquitoes just in your yard.
I think we've gone about as long as we have this summer. We're in a drought now. We're back in drought.
Yep.
We've gone about a week without a rain, a serious rain. So maybe that'll help ease that a little bit. But What are some other things with the summertime issues? We know obviously it strains more of the utilities and things like that, but have you guys had to deal with any other heat-related issues?
I don't know about heat. I think maybe the heat's made people a little more aggressive. So we've had some issues. You know, you saw this morning somebody hit a pole downtown. We had more vandalism in the parks not this past weekend. I hadn't gotten that report yet, but the one before. So, you know, we'd encourage people to drink water before they get too angry at somebody else or get too aggressive and want to tear something up. But no, to my knowledge, the buildings have held up very well. We made some investments in some of the buildings with new HVAC systems over the last year. So the employees, at least the ones that work inside, aren't complaining. So I think overall the heat's had a pretty minimal impact on what we're doing this year.
And really, it was a late heat. I mean, we've had 100-degree days in June, and we didn't hit one. We didn't have one day over 100 in June, and probably not a whole lot in 90s this June. So, and almost halfway through July, we really didn't have a super hot period. Of course, we had the monsoon season come through, and that's not bad, but yeah, it's been a pretty, really honestly, it's been a pretty mild season up until, say, the last week or so. I mean, getting into those consistent 100 or near 100 degrees and that kind of thing. Does that affect like the emergency personnel? Have you seen any increase in the number of calls or any heat exhaustion in the public or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, fortunately for us, major crime is much more of an anomaly. And by major crime, I mean murder and rape and the big assault cases. So I think that's as much a testament to the people who live here as it is the law enforcement agencies, because we're just a more friendly kind of group, and a lot of times we keep our fights to ourselves, but and they don't get reported. But no, the summer heat has not impacted us in that way yet, thankfully. We had the one unfortunate incident down south, but for the most part, I think things are statistically on track to where they usually are. Now, I will say last year when I got here, it was 100 degrees every day until I think October, and I thought that I'd moved to the hottest place on the planet.
Yeah, I'm no geologist, and I don't understand those patterns, but just growing up here, it does feel like there's been a slow shift that the hotter days are later in the year and longer. It's not like you have less of them. They've just moved more towards the end of summer and early fall, as opposed to hitting you right after school. I remember, there was times graduation could be 100 degrees in May, and that hasn't happened in quite a while. It just seemed like it's sliding back. That's just an observation. There's no scientific basis on any of that. So,
well, I remember many a year during harvest, especially when he was out there on the combine and out in the wheat field, and it'd be 103, 105. Some days a little more than that, but it does seem like that it's kind of cooled off a little bit. Of course, I know the news media loves to report on major record being set in temperatures and all, but Phoenix, I think, has been over 30 days over 110. Well, it's always hot in Phoenix. I remember one afternoon walking down the alley there going to the house, and it was 117. Now we're talking hot, but anyway, I think we've been pretty lucky out here on the west side of the state, because if you look at the temperatures, compared to here to, a little ways east, they're all above the hundreds, and we're in the high 90s. So far so good, and we're through July, which is always a hot spot. And time we get through August, why, it should start cooling down a little bit. So 30, 45 days, it'll start cooling down.
Here at the end of July, we started talking about back to school, and I know usually there's a program of the crosswalks and stuff like that around schools. Is that part of the program this year? There's usually a refreshing of some of the paint and things like that, where the kids are going to be walking to school.
So once again, the mayor's talked about it, and I've talked about it. We're much healthier this week than we were last week, employment-wise. We've got to be really cognizant of where we put our manpower and our labor force. So we haven't discussed specifically restriping any of the crosswalks. I know that Bruce in the Parks Department and Chewy in the Street Department, they stay pretty up on the things that need the big ticket items that need to be fixed. So I wouldn't imagine that there would be an issue anywhere that's significant enough to cause any, knock on wood, any major injuries or damage. But so the short answer is no. There's no plan in place, but it's, they're always keeping an eye out on that stuff.
And we haven't been able to talk a lot in depth per se about some of these things, but we have addressed the KDOT's plans, looking to come in and make that investment there. As you look on down through town through Pancake Boulevard, and I know that KDOT has a lot to say on what you can and can't do along that because that is still the highway, but we have a lot of commercial, property along through there. There've been talk in the years past about either some beautification or some things, along Pancake Boulevard. Have you guys had any continued discussions on what can be done through that pass-through in town to spark that up a little bit? I know that you guys are looking at a dog park over by the tourist area, and I don't know I know some land purchasing acquisition company bought the former McDermott location, one side of the bridge. You got Mary Frame, which looks good on the other side. Any beautification discussions or anything along Pancake as they're talking about bringing a new entry into Liberal on the east side?
I think the biggest one on that one would be the continuation of the facade grant, as well as maybe increasing that amount to see if any of the current businesses are interested in, updating that part. Another thing we've kind of looked into, but it's not, once again, it depends on how much manpower we have, and this is on the code side, to make sure that any empty buildings over there have a plan to be used or aren't just being abandoned or just bought and held for a long period of time. So there needs to be a plan in place, but there's limits to how much we can either punish someone or incentivize someone to do something with their property, even if it is on a nice commercial boulevard.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be a downtown business association, and there were talks of activities and things like that, kind of fizzled out. I wonder if there'd be a good way, if those business owners along there, of course, it's got to be something that they want to do and form up their own little group and talk about that. I do hear from time to time about what can be done along there. There are some businesses, I don't want to say abandoned, maybe they are, because I haven't seen any commercial work done in some of those buildings, especially on the east side of Pancake Boulevard in quite some time. I think most of the stuff getting closer to the center of town. I did hear that there's a contract on the former Presto location, so I think that'd be good to get something else in there and fill that, because that's right on the corner right there. So it's always good at that. As you guys are coming up on the budgeting process, I think you guys moved that back. It used to be like July was a month when you guys would have the hearings and stuff, but what'd you move that back to?
The budget's due to the state October 1st. We'll do the budget hearing sometime around, in the R&R hearing sometime in probably mid to late September. I don't know, we published it in your newspaper.
Yeah, you got to put the date.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the exact date, but
I just knew it was moved back because
Yeah.
it used to be now, or around now, and you guys would have the hearings. Sometimes they had them out at the Air Museum. There's a room out there that they used to have some of those hearings out there. Where do you guys do that now? Just at the Blue Bonnet building?
Which is actually, we have our first R&R hearing on August the 8th
Yeah.
at Blue Bonnet, because I believe our chambers are ready, but we can't have it at the new chambers because we already published the hearing at Blue Bonnet Park. So we finally have that place opened up, and we went ahead and said, yeah, we still can't do it out there.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what though, your next city commission meeting, is it going to be in the new building?
No. Because of the R&R hearing, we have to have it at Blue Bonnet Park
Oh.
still.
That's kind of like being all dressed up and no place to go, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, that's what that place is doing. There's a good layer of dust right now on some of those chairs.
So I'll tell you what, I think once you get over there, you're going to like it. I mean, because you had to, really the changes that you've had to make are for the fire and things like that. So the chambers themselves have been in pretty good shape for a while. It's just getting the code up to snuff. That's really what's been holding it up, hasn't it?
That was it.
Yeah, and I walked in there Friday, and the IT department had wires hanging everywhere, and they were running. I mean, it looked like a spider web, but it'll be ready to go. Is it the 22nd of August? We were structured differently when we set up those chambers than we are now. So the commission has really good seating, but the staff's going to have to come up with a different solution, because those one, you can't match the little tables. I don't know if you've been in there yet, but on each side of the diocese there's 2 seats, and we have about 6 people that participate now instead of 4. So somebody's not going to get a chair. So we're going to I'm going to have to manage that ego as we get into that. And, either that, or we're going to have to double up on the diocese, and I don't think anybody wants that.
Call me and I'll come down and build you a table.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that either. I was thinking about, that main, like you say, the diocese, where that's at. How about, is there a little podium for like when people come to speak? So that's good. So, that's where, of course, that used to be a library. So that was the librarian's area that they modified where the commissioners will be. I didn't see, but you're right, staff has to have place at the side. The school board needs it for them because they have staff. The county has some space around theirs, but yeah, you guys need to have that. I still think it's going to be better than portable tables over at the park building.
It looks a lot better, and really staff seating is not that big a deal, because we don't get large crowds. If we walk into a meeting and there's a large crowd, there's a oh goodness moment that you have. So we have many more spectators than what we have in this room right now. Then that's unusual. So it's not a big deal.
Usually the people that show up are going to participate in some way. They're there to make a presentation, or that you guys are going to do a proclamation or something like that.
Yep.
And that's not the worst thing. Like you said, if the room is full, I remember, if you remember, this was years ago when the state changed the rule on guns. And so that affected municipalities and counties as far as like you either going to have to put
Metal detectors.
at every single entry of every single
Yeah.
building you had, or you had to allow concealed carry. And so most cities said, we can't afford to do that. So they said, we're just going to have to allow concealed carry. But I remember having a resolution in support of that filled the room and filled the county. Were you at the county when that happened?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what was that like for you guys?
Well, we just decided that, we couldn't, like you said, you can't afford to put one of those stations at every building. And that's basically what that law required. And so we just decided that we'd scrape that no guns allowed sign off of the door, and nobody noticed any difference, and we got along fine. But, at the time they did it, it was a huge deal and very expensive. And so we decided to go the other way, and that's what we did, just scrape the decal off of the doors and called it good. And it worked out fine.
And the college did similar thing. I think
Sure.
they have signs that says, I think I say concealed carry. I think it's actually no open carry.
Yeah, yeah, there's
So you
one
can
up
have
there,
concealed
yeah.
carry, you can't have open carry.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but that's just an example of a crowd drawing event where people were coming to show support for something that they wanted to see done. Or, during COVID, I guess COVID was after your time when you got elected, but COVID brought some
Right after.
audiences on, either some who didn't want any kind of regulations at
Yeah.
all, and others who wanted shutdown.
That's
And
right.
so you had a room full of opposition. I think the county, was it the county meeting, or I think it was city.
Both. I mean,
Was-
both meetings had quite a few people showing up.
But I think at the city one was at the Girl Scout building, and that was a good audience in there for that one. And there's a lot of medical professionals in there, and that I do remember that one. But
If we'd only known then what we know now, things would have been considerably different, probably.
have you guys, I guess, and not to get off topic, but I don't know if there's been any. Have you guys changed any rules that became permanent at the city, or has COVID now come and gone, and life is kind of pre-COVID now? I can't think of anything that has been a permanent fixture. Masks came and went. Shots, no one's talking about shots anymore. I don't think you guys ever made it a requirement to have a shot to have a job.
So I was watching during those times, and the only thing the city really changed with what they passed was it allowed business owners to determine if what is required for you to access their building, and that was basically it. They didn't make anything mandatory. They just basically gave the authority to the business owner to determine their own business and how they want to run it.
And there was a lot of them that didn't want to do that, which was rather surprising to me. The business owner wanted the county or the city to establish regulations that you don't come in the door without a mask. And to me, that wasn't ever, the city or the county's right to do that. I mean, you as a business owner have the right to decide, but there was a lot of them that didn't want to do that. We got some pretty good heat out of that. I've still got some emails stored away from some folks that were pretty irate because we wouldn't pass that mandatory mask thing for everybody. And there was certainly a lot of opinions, and some of them were pretty strong in those days.
Well, it's a good thing that's in the rearview mirror.
That's right, it
And,
is.
We can look forward now.
Yep.
So, I remember, Rusty, when we talked about this maybe a year ago, but it's always difficult to do that long-term look or that kind of thing when you're having to put out fires every day. And that's, a big thing what you guys have to look at, because you got to deal with the problem right in front of you before you can look ahead to see where you want to go. I know you kind of restructured some things. Now you brought on, I know they're still new, but you brought on a PR person. You guys just recently hired a lobbying firm. We've got retail strategies. So you've had a pretty active year in getting some things in place where you like that. How has that done for you on your time to do that look ahead view? Have you been able to do any of that?
So I think we've gone from having stew, a real thick thing in front of us, to soup, which is so everything's still real. There's still a lot of knife fights, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I told someone, I tell everyone, this job is completely different than what I thought it would be because of what occupies my time. It's so very little of day-to-day stuff, little stuff, and so much of big-ticket things we need to fix for the future. That's one of the reasons that we're soliciting bids from KU and Wichita State to focus our comprehensive plan that we're going to recommend going that route to the commission, because our code is an absolute disaster. So much of that stuff was agenda-driven that's in there, and I need the building department working on their day-to-day stuff plus trying to fix the code. We need planning and zoning focused on planning and zoning. None of us have enough time to prioritize making that 20-year plan that we need to have to kind of get a blueprint. But I think, I say this a lot, if half of the stuff that's in the hopper comes out, Liberal's going to look very different this time next year than it does today. So there's a big reason for optimism. I don't know how you feel about that, but.
No, definitely. And I mean, that's probably something we've been saying on this show the last 3 months, if not even more, that there's only so much we can push forward before as a commission, we can come out and say, you know what, let's do this, 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 and this, and then we're just going to put an avalanche of different agendas onto the staff, and then you need the manpower to actually make them happen. So we've kind of held back and made sure that the staff is in a position that if we went forward with this idea now, is it going to overwhelm you, or is this something we can accomplish within a reasonable timeline? So if you're not seeing a lot of changes, which I mean a lot of the changes are still happening behind the scenes, but we were kind of keeping it day to day with just a few big ticket items every 2 months is kind of how we've been going so far. Because again, there's no point in passing everything and then saying, well, good luck.
Well, I know I had a copy of the code book at one time. I loaned it out and didn't get it back yet. So if you're out there, feel free to bring it back.
Just let them keep it.
It's changed already.
Well, the thing is, you look on one page and it'll say something, you go a few pages over and it can say something, and I know it's up to interpretation for the code enforcement officer, but it's like, what are we looking at here? I mean, it ought to be cleaned up a little bit. And I know, like on building codes, that's an adopted deal of an international system, so that you don't want your neighbor running wires and stuff like that that's going to burn both houses down. There's codes, to protect for those kind of things. Things like parking and other things like that can be customized, to community. Those kind of things are in the code book. What can park on the street, what can't park on the street, what has to be parked on improved parking, what has to be parked on the side or the back. I mean, it's all in the book, and it can be confusing to somebody, looking from if there's contradictory code. At least that's what I've seen. Is that accurate?
Oh, very much. And even with internally, like the book I have in my office is different than the book we have online, and it's different than the one that Keith and the building department often operate under. Now we did pay, I forget the company we paid to redo our online book, but they're going through all the ordinances, which we found nothing had been filed with the county in a decade or over a decade. I'm sorry, from like 2000 up to at least 2009, nothing had been filed with the county, so it never made it into the actual code. So even though the commissions took actions on things, it never got codified formally. So, I feel really bad when people ask me, hey, can I do this? Because I have to call Keith and go, I try to go by what he and his department are working off of, not that book I have from 2012 that's on my desk, or jumping around online to try to find it. It's just a mess, and we owe people a better answer and a more consistent product on that.
Well, I'm glad you're you're working on that, because I think that is one way. Community's got to go forward. Just got to know the rules. Everyone's got to know the rules and play by the same set of rules, and as long as that's there, then then you can move forward. I know, Jose, you talked about last week. I don't remember when you said it's this week that you guys are looking at some things on the overpass, getting some information on that.
So the engineers had mentioned during the KDOT meeting that they were going to send over some information regarding grants and just where they're at in the process. So, I mean, we have Rusty here now, so we'll just have him send another email to make sure they remember that they made that promise.
I know that they sent me a couple of grant programs, and Keely started vetting them, and she was really excited about the railroad grant being perhaps our best chance to get considerable help with the funding. It's the same program that Wellington used to do theirs. So she's reached out to Wellington, and she's gotten, I don't know if she's gotten the copies yet or not, of their grant application that was approved, and working through how they processed it. And I'm glad you said that, because we need to pay the bill to the insurance, to the engineers, because they sent it to me and I forgot to process it. So that might be why we hadn't gotten it yet. But there's just a lot of stuff in the hopper, and one of the biggest disruptions that we have is people who want to do something that's completely against the code, that they think shouldn't be against code, and they want us to make an exception, and we don't do that anymore. I think that the public got so used to, oh yeah, I know Jim, he's my neighbor, he lives down the street, I let him do it, he can build that. he can put that cell tower in his front yard if he wants to. I don't care. And whereas Jose lived on the south side, and I don't like him, and so I'm not going to let him do this. And we've essentially eradicated all of that now. And a lot of the people who are used to don't tell me what to do or I'll do whatever I want, who don't get to do that anymore, really cause issues. I think I told you last time I was here, some lady called and told Keith, "Don't you recognize my last name?" He was like, "Well, yeah, I recognize the last name, but you still can't do what you want to do."
Well, that's what I was talking about. You know, the rules got to be fair for everybody and lay them all out. And we can all play by the same rules. That's what.
Well, on that part, we've been having a few issues with, we've now set this in place, but that also means everything in the past has been grandfathered in. And so one issue we've been running into is, you know, just those little fences on the easement. Well, technically they shouldn't be there, but no one was enforcing that in the past. So I get a call from I thought it was a client, but it wasn't a client, it was a citizen. And they built one because they're having issues with their neighbor. But then we as the building department and the city have to tell them, no, sorry, you can't. And they ask, well, why not? 3 of our neighbors on the same street, on the same block, have those fences. Why can we not do it? And so it's really hard to explain that, well, they were allowed to do it then. It was against code then, but nobody enforced it. But we're enforcing it now. We're sorry if that ever gets damaged and they ever have to replace it. We'll enforce it on them that they can't put it back in. But it is a little difficult to say, well, my neighbor right in front of my yard does this. Why can I not do that? And that's been why, because they were grandfathered in a way. And we're not in a position or prepared to say we're going to enforce these codes and we're going to make everyone go back and fix everything to come up to code. Now, again, if they ever pull a permit or have to do something, we will then, but that's just something we're working in. Everyone's going to play by the same rules now and moving forward, and we'll try and address issues as they come up.
Yeah, retroactive never goes well. And, you know, oh, by the way, here's a new rule and you don't apply and it doesn't fit you, or here was the rule, we let you go for 10 years, now we're going to come tear your fence down. You know, that would be a nightmare on top of what you already have, trying to just get it established now.
We have that a lot of time with signs and signage. Every city, this is cyclical. People get really upset about signs or deteriorated signs or banners, and it's a big deal, and then it fizzles out, and then a couple years later it comes back. You know, now I get a lot of questions about the banners at the pool, advertising banners. I would say that 70% of the city doesn't care, 15% are very much in favor, and 15% think it's hell on earth.
Adamantly opposed.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like that with almost every issue that we face that pops up, code-wise or otherwise. You know, about 70% don't care. They just want to go to work, go home, watch TV, and be left alone. And then 15% have a very strong opinion this way, another 15 this way. And, you know, you want to respectfully listen, but sometimes it's just not as big a deal. It's not something we can prioritize now.
Is there a code about that? I mean, those vinyl signs on the fence?
Well, so
There might be 3.
There might be 3.
So you can have a temporary banner or sign for 30 days without pulling the permit. You know, that's something that the city does for advertising for the businesses. It's as much a service. I mean, they pay a fee, but it's really a service for local businesses. Some people think it looks cheap. I don't really notice it. I pay attention to who's on there every once in a while, but I don't think it's a big deal. But we get a lot of hypocrisy talk about how the city is violating its own code because they've got a temporary banner that's up more than 30 days. Well, okay, maybe. I mean, that's an interpretation. You know, as long as you're looking for something we're doing wrong, you're going to find plenty, because there's a lot of stuff that we haven't gotten good at yet. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the performance of the staff and the boards that are appointed that are doing stuff for the folks around here.
Yeah, well, see, and I mean, I had no idea that they were doing a code for that. You know, I thought, what about, I mean, some places like that would put, it's kind of a screen wrap that allows air in and out, but you can put a screen wrap just to kind of give a different look around the fence around the pool. I think you guys probably want people to see into the pool. It's probably a good way to sell the pool is when people see it. So, I mean, I guess the signs, if anything, would affect that. But if you put a wrap around there, would that be considered as signage? Because a lot of people put wraps around, I mean, not wrap like on your car, but a wrap that allows air in and out, and you can put logos. I mean, like football stadiums don't want chain link fence. So they'll put that wrap around that, and it'll have their logos and all that kind of stuff. Is that different?
It would be.
Yeah. Depends on how you interpret it, but
Yeah,
you know,
that's
right.
but you know, if the city starts taking those down, then we've got to go out to the college, and we've got to go out to the baseball fields and take
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
signs off the walls, and then the people who paid for those signs are going to be mad, and the people who rely on that for fundraising are going to be mad. So I mean, there's things that are important and things that are interesting. And a lot of things that you find important, I find interesting. That goes on a list that we'll look at one day. But I'm much, you know, someone was complaining about all the Oklahoma license plates. And while yes, that's a problem, I would much rather have the police department focused on keeping the community safe and preventing murders and rapes, and then going through each neighborhood with a video camera to determine how many days that you had an Oklahoma vehicle parked in your yard, or don't park in your yard, in your driveway.
But we do discourage that.
We do, very much so.
Because that's taxes, revenue, you know, and that's supporting another state versus where you're actually using the vehicle by law. You're supposed to be registered in your place. But yeah, I mean, it's a pick and choose thing. Do you go around and just nitpick? And that's another thing. Some people would want you guys to just be Politburo. And some of it's just like, hey, if we speed or we cross the light, you got to pull us over. We did the crime. We did that. That's part of the job. But are you guys policing, or are you guys just out to find, like you said, if you want to find someone doing something wrong, just follow someone around. I'm sure they're going to coast through a stop sign, or they're going to go 21 in a 20. I mean, you can find a reason. Is that the kind of community we really want? I don't think it is.
So my very first city that I was city manager, there was a saying, I hated it. It's just Kiowa, which meant just leave us alone. We'll do whatever we want. It's just Kiowa. So you don't want that. And the Politburo thing only works if you have enforcement, and we can't line people up at the fountain and shoot them for not cutting their grass. But people,
Some would want you to.
yes, some would want that. So but everyone wants that until your grass is too tall.
Right.
So, you know, it's a rough balance. It's not something that that we enjoy, because there's interpretations that the city prosecutor has that the municipal judge doesn't share, that is not shared with at the county level. So you know, it's very hard to maintain consistent policy until you understand what each entity believes and wants.
Well, you said something earlier that I really appreciate, and that is something we haven't always had in the past. But you point out we've got to mess with the code books trying to get that all cleaned up in uniform. There have been times where you feel like people have felt like that, the city's going to defend every single action no matter what. At least you're coming in and you're seeing, hey, we can do better. And you're willing to say, this is an area we can do better. And so I just want to say I appreciate that. You're not just coming in and justifying every single thing, but you're evaluating it and seeing, does this flow? Is this the right kind of thing? And I'll say for the commission, the same kind of thing. I mean, getting away from, say, favoritism as far as, okay, you can set code, but we're going to enforce it on you. It's got to be enforced evenly. Equal protection of the law has got to apply to codes too. I mean, it can't be who you are. It's got to be, does this meet code? Is this the right size? Is it the right length? Do you have the right support, the wind load, all the things it takes to be within code? I get that. So I did want to say that, it's refreshing that you'll look internally and not just with a a defender's eye and just say, I'm going to defend every single thing just because I'm a part of the system, I'm going to defend it. Instead of saying, well, I am part of it, but I'm also a citizen here. I want to see if we're doing the right thing by the citizen. Am I missing that? Is that something that, what's the approach?
No, definitely. That's been, I know at the beginning, it probably made Rusty a little uncomfortable because I kept using a word that made him kind of question what was going on. And in a lot of the meetings, we talked about making sure we held somebody accountable, whether it was the city manager or someone on the staff. And at times it might have felt like maybe we were coming after him, but it was just to make sure that the public knew we weren't going to play that game anymore, kind of that had been done in the past, where if you just knew the right people or if you knew the right commissioner, this was going to happen for you. And that we've done away with that. Rusty has done an amazing job to make sure that we're trying to enforce that as much as we can, as well as Keith. That being said, though, you mentioned at the USD 480 mini forum, I want to call it, at the chamber, kind of the responsibilities of your board members. And I wanted to add then that as a commissioner, we have two responsibilities at the end of the day. One is to be the voice of the community to the city staff, but also to protect the city staff from the community. And it's a very fine line that you walk, because there are things the community, like mosquitoes, will hunt you down for, and that's not something the city staff is doing. We're not going to go to them every single time and say, why aren't you spraying more? Why aren't you getting rid of them? So we have to be the barrier as well as the voice. And it's a tough line to walk, but if you do it right, you'll get the best results. Because when the community wants to hold staff accountable, we can. But when the community wants to just go after staff, we can stop them there.
Well, and one thing I've been trying to do for a long time, if you put you guys as the commission, I don't like the idea that you have citizens on one side and staff on the other. My job and what I try to do is that we bend this so that we're side by side. We're partners. We've got to have relationships between citizens and staff that are positive relationships and can build from that. You're going to have that unruly citizen. At the same time, you can see nationwide, sometimes you get a bad cop. I'm not saying whether we have a bad cop, but it does happen. It does happen that sometimes, I say there's some people that should never have an official's whistle in a Little League game, because they love that whistle. But, and sometimes there's actually fouls. Sometimes your kids actually do commit a foul. So it's got to be, and I love, if you guys know Rick Potts, look at how he does his job as an official. No one looks at him as them, but as us. And that's when I think communities get it, is when we don't see us and we see a them. We see we're in this together. We've got to have a good relationship, and that doesn't mean every single person, because like you said, there's going to be 15% that work against everything you try. And there's going to be 15% that'll support anything you ever do. It's that 70% in the middle, how do they break? Do they break 35 this way? Do they break 35 that way? What do they think at the end of the day that can break that? But as a commission, your job is, as I see it, as you explained it, it's to be, I don't see it as protect this or protect that. I see it as conduit, where we can both flow through freely with one another, and that the community gets on the same page together and is working together. So there are times you have to defend staff when they're being unfairly attacked. And then there might be a time when you say,
They have
hey,
a point.
Staff guy, maybe we need to look at what we need to do here. Likewise, if there's someone in the public that's just being a chowderhead, you have to say, hey, you're going to have to back off, because, that's not where we are as a community. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. Like signs on the swimming pool wall, like that, really that is what we're going to focus on. So I think you guys have a big deal with that, and Rusty, I think that it's been refreshing that you've been able to say, we'll look at it. You know, that we're going to look at the code book. We're going to see if it's actually fair or consistent. That's a good thing. I think that's all the public can ask. Just be fair. I think that's all that you ask of city staff. It's not, you know, there's recently some work done by the gas company in my alley, you know, and they said, hey, Earl, we're going to be doing this, that. Yeah, they did that. They moved the meter from the alley to the houses in my neighborhood. That's what they're doing. They had to mess up the alley a little bit to do that because they had to dig holes and stuff like that. And then here comes the rain, so now me going out to the trash can is sloshing through the mud to get through that. Now it ticks me off, but it doesn't tick me off because they did it, because it had to be done. It just ticked me off that, dang, they had to do that right before monsoon season, and now I got to slosh through the mud. But some people will be ticked off and call the gas company and say, when are you going to come fix my alley? Now it's a bunch of mud. You know, I mean, we're making improvements, and sometimes improvements, you've got to dust some things up a little bit. So I'll give you the last word here. We've held you a lot longer than we expected. Appreciate you guys hanging around. Is there anything else going on that you feel like public needs to know about? Is there going to be any projects anywhere, anything coming up that's going to affect anything?
I don't think there's any big ticket item that's going to disrupt day-to-day flow. We're getting really close to where you don't want to do anything. You don't want to start anything that's going to interrupt or make the back to school negatively impacted, because that's stressful enough for everybody. So you don't want to do big traffic stuff and or you know, a lot of the water stuff. The $4 million water project they approved, I signed the final paperwork for the loan last week, so that part is finally done, and now KDHE can approve the plans, and then we can go to bid letting in the fall to get started on that. But that's probably the next big thing that folks will see.
notice.
Yeah. Of course, you never notice a water line. You just know that if you turn your faucet on, it works. If it's clear, you're happy. If it's not, let it run a minute.
You get a call.
Yeah. So.
If it looks like horchata, you got to make a phone call. Don't drink that.
Yeah. But no, but that's kind of the next big thing. But I'll let the mayor finish up. Just remember, go vote tomorrow. Officially, I don't care who you vote for, but just go and vote.
There you
Um, well, we have some of those grants that we approved, but we'll just discuss those in the next meeting next week. Anyone can go to the city, look at our agendas, and see what we did change. We've increased amounts on some of them, but we'll go over them next Monday. But basically the same thing, just get out there and vote, make your voice heard. Because of how I'm here, I'm not going to say who you should vote for either, but if you're, again, happy with the direction things have been going, there's 2 incumbents running, so you should consider them as well.
And you've got, I think, till noon today for advanced voting at the Seward County Administration Building, and then it'll cut off so they have time to go get set up at the Seward County Activity Center, which will open at 7 a.m. to voters, and it'll close at 7 p.m. We will be here live, coming on live at 7 p.m., and we will let you know the results as soon as they are available. And tell you what, it sounds like it's been low voter turnout so far when I've heard the numbers of the advanced voting. So either a lot of people are waiting until day of, and maybe with the field of 10, they're weighing all their options. But we talk about it all the time. You know, if you don't vote, you know, you're really letting someone else pick your community leaders for you.
You can't call the city manager. Is that the rule you want to make? If you don't vote, you can't call the city manager.
So
There you go.
You know, but yeah, you know, if you feel like you don't like something or you do like something, this is your chance to speak out, one way or another. To go out and say, I like the way things are going. I want to keep some things rocking and rolling, or hey, I like what this message was. You have to participate. This is where it matters. So, guys, we appreciate you guys coming in and sharing with us here this morning. We're going to be back with you with some other news and views right after this. Fall off the bone ribs, dripping with our signature barbecue sauce. Tender pulled pork and brisket smoked to perfection. All served with family recipe home-style sides. It's all waiting for you at the Brick House Barbecue and Brew. Open 7 days a week, your barbecue appetite can be satisfied anytime for lunch or dinner. Brickhouse serves full dinners, combos, sandwiches, and take-home packs. Enjoy a variety of brews on tap or a mixed drink, shaken, not stirred. Give your taste buds a treat at Brickhouse Barbecue and Brew, 24 East 2nd Street in Liberal. Like us on Facebook and see our full menu at brickhouselk.com. Always good to get the update from the city, see what's rocking and rolling, and we appreciate that. On Mondays, get the week started with a little update of what's going on there. And again, it is important. Tomorrow is Election Day, and got to get out there. Got to get out there and make your voice heard. Oh, I want to remind everyone too, I mean, if you're watching this on Facebook Live, that's great. We're also now on YouTube at the Leader in Times channel, and this is our second broadcast on that. So if you have a smart TV and you'd like to watch this on your smart TV, you can do that now. And if you missed one and you want to go back and see what somebody said, we've got two now. So we got a huge inventory in our Facebook side, but we'll start building the inventory here as we go along and do these here as well. So, but it's been pretty busy here. I mean, July, it's flown by so fast. There's a lot of things going on. B, you were on the whirlwind tour. Seemed like you got to take a couple. You went a couple places this summer, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you were out and about. You going anywhere this summer? You're running out of time.
No, you know, I don't know whether I'm waiting on cooler weather or warmer weather or what, but I got too many things going on. I thought when I quit farming, you know, all those kind of things, well, I'd have a little time. For some reason, I'm busier now, got more stuff I can entertain myself quite well all day long, every day.
I did run into Joanne the other day out at Mixteca. She was having lunch out there.
She lives out there.
Does she? She likes it.
Sure, but she's been out there quite a bit.
We
They heard that robot's got something going on.
we did a little film of Chabalita. You can go see Chabalita, the robot, bringing your chips to your table. And if you want to see that, you'll scroll down a few days. You'll find, if you go to the videos and go back, it's a shortcut. But you can see Chabalita taking chips to a table at
If you
Mixteca.
go out there, he'll serve you, or she will serve you.
Yep, she'll bring you some chips and that. Well, you know, we've had a lot of things going on here locally. The BJs will start at the national tournament on Thursday against the Seattle Studs. I wrote a little bit of a sports column on that in Sunday's paper if you'd like to take a look at that. In the morning at 10 o'clock over in Plains, they're going to have the final burial for Sergeant Elliott. We did a feature on that a couple of Sundays ago. And if you can get over there, this is a World War II pilot from, or not pilot, World War II gunner from Plains who was in the Ploesti attacks in Romania in World War II, August 1, 1943, to cut off Hitler's oil supply. And I think there was 177 B-24s that were part of that attack, and 53 didn't make it home. And he was one of those that didn't make it back and was unidentified in a cemetery in Romania for 80 years. They finally were able to DNA test and discovered that that is Sergeant Elliott. So he's finally coming back home to the United States of America and be buried in his hometown cemetery tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So if you can make that, I certainly encourage you to get over there for that.
Yep, that's rather amazing what all this identification, DNA, and all that can do nowadays, you know. Folks so long ago, you know, whether it's finding somebody like him, you know, others that committed crimes or, you know, whatever, they can use that to pretty much identify anybody anywhere nowadays.
There's going to be a B-52 flyover at the end of the service, and I believe this service is being handled out of the military base up by Manhattan and Junction City, and so they're coming out to do it. But my understanding is this B-52 flyover is from the same company that he served in, you know, years later. So what an honor, you know, to have B-52 flyover at a World War II heroes funeral 80 years after. And I just give hats off to the government, which is not going to happen a lot for the federal government, but that the military continues to be this dedicated to our service people years later like that, to find them and bring them home 80 years later, and they're still bringing them home. I mean, I think that says something.
Think about how old that airplane is still flying. My goodness.
B-52?
You know, yeah, it's got to be older than 80 if he was flying in it.
Oh, no, it's the same company. So whatever the squadron number
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
is that.
But the age of that plane has got to be up there in years.
Yeah, but I've ridden in a B-17 out here. I don't think the age of a plane, I don't know if it's different than for a car, because they don't seem to wear out the same.
Well, back then is when they made real equipment.
Yeah.
They actually used American-made
Steel.
produced steel. They didn't use plastic and fiberglass, all that other stuff, and bring it from China. So, that's probably the reason that thing's still flying. I often think about that about farm equipment. And these old tractors that these guys are fixing up. Those things, back in the 50s and probably up until the 70s maybe, they were produced out of real steel, real American steel, and they're still running. They'll still work. But how many of those that are being made today are going to be, operating 70 years from now with all the computers and everything? They're going to be a heck of a pile right out there beside all them windmill blades.
Yep.
Well, but I'll say this on the computerization. I think, the engine components seem to last a lot longer because they are precision made. And I think there's an advantage to that. As far as like the rest of the material that they put the cars together with, I think the bodies wear out now before the engines do. Used to be the other way around. The engines would give up, or have malfunctions. But as precision as they are today, that seems to last. But yeah, a B-52 flyover for Sergeant Elliott, and we encourage you. I know 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, that's a rough time. But I just hope that a lot of people will go out and send this guy home in the way that he deserves to be. I know I'm going to be over there. I know several of the Sons of the American Revolution from here will be over there. I think our American Legion's going over. But anybody who can, I hope will go over to that. Looking at the newest poll this morning, CBS News has released their poll, and they have Biden at 40% approve, 60% disapprove. I think that's a high in disapproval here. Looking at a lot of the recent polling, 60% disapproval rating. That's pretty high right there. And I wonder if some of this stuff is starting to stick with the Hunter Biden scandal. With I think they said now the bank records they have the numbers of money going to Biden's from foreign agents like Ukraine and China up to $50 million. But what's your thoughts on what's affecting a poll like CBS, which is no bastion of conservatism, and their poll is 60-40?
Yeah. Well, I think it's well deserved, and it's probably worse than that if we really knew the truth. But lots and lots of concern about Devin Archer testifying before Congress this morning in a closed door hearing. As I understand it, his comments and the questions from congressmen that are involved will be available possibly Wednesday morning, unless the White House can figure out some way to stop those from being public information. And a lot of anticipation and expectations to what Mr. Archer might disclose about his former business partner Hunter Biden. No doubt he knows a lot of things that we don't know yet. There's some discussion about about there, I guess, an attempt by the Department of Justice to issue a letter to his attorney saying you need to appear now so we can put you in jail before you go to this hearing. And I guess that didn't work out too well, but you know, I heard a lot of comments about, well, why would that be issued on a Saturday? You know, but that tells me that you might have a lot of information there that's going to become even more revealing about how the Biden family is involved in all these transactions to, you know, provide them with $50 million over the years. You know, and probably more. I heard the other day again, you know, that it was going to be closer to 100, and I think at that time there was about 10 million that they had identified, and now then apparently they've identified about 50 million. And that hasn't been that long, that's only been a week or 10 days ago. So, you know, I think the more we hear this thing, you know, I think that poll number of 40% could drop considerably more now once the general public learns about all of the monkey business that's been going on behind closed doors and you know, Joe Biden taking advantage of our tax money. You know, that's, you know, by funding these organizations and entities and all that, you know, look at how about that $200 million that we dropped into Ukraine? How much of that could have came back maybe in a different form, but you know, helping those folks out. You know, I don't know. So it's going to be fun just to see what Mr. Archer can provide us. Maybe nothing new, but maybe something really good.
So, B, you look at a poll 60-40 CBS, and that's 60 not to the good for Biden, that's 60 against him. That's not good numbers for a president seeking re-election. What's your thoughts on what's affecting and influencing the polls?
Well, I think for me, it's pretty easy to look around and see what your interest rates are right now. I mean, people, you know, can't buy houses. Their credit, they can't use their credit cards because it costs so much to use them. Go to the grocery store, look at the prices on stuff. I mean, you have to take a loan to go buy a steak in the grocery store. Gas prices, I mean, everything is costing so much more. And we talk about, you know, Biden economics. I think that his Biden economics are killing all of us, at least the average person. You know, people that have savings, I mean, they're probably have to get dipping into their savings now and losing money doing that. So I think the American people are realizing, hey, what we got going on in Washington is not working really well for them right now. So they're going to be pretty pissed about it.
And rightfully so. I mean, when you look at your savings accounts, you look at, you know, what has happened to 401ks, you look at what's happened to the cost of living, the cost of gas, the cost of groceries. You know, everyone's feeling this, and they're trying to tell you. I mean, I just don't know the strategy in trying to say Bidenomics is working when you knew before there was such a thing as Bidenomics, you were better off than you are now. I mean, how do you sell that?
Well, I don't think you do to anybody that's got elected common sense. I think they can see very well what's happened to their bank account and all of the other things that goes along with, you know, providing the family with their needs. And it doesn't work. And he keeps, you know, saying, well, you know, it's going to get better. It's coming. You know, we've created all of these jobs and all that. But I don't know. And then you run on to things like this. I heard this morning here, Steve Gruber. I need to put that on. It must be running out. All right, we'll get this up here.
Or it's off, but one way or another.
One or the other. Anyway, Steve Gruber was talking this morning about a Chinese-owned biolab found in Fresno County, California. Perhaps similar to the Wuhan lab. We know what happened there, but anyway, it said hundreds of mice were found. A couple hundred of them were dead, while others were alive. Vials of unlabeled diseases that they found, different types of disease, and many that were not or were labeled. So, but what in the world is a Chinese lab doing in the United States? Here about a month or so ago, we discovered that all of a sudden that they had their own police stations in the United States. Well, now then, the Chinese are operating, a biolab, and who knows how many more they've got scattered around the country, and what for? I mean, what kind of building policies do they have? What kind of a permit do you have to get to that? And they talked about all of the freezers and all the refrigerators and all of that stuff that somebody was paying the electric bill for, and there was no questions being asked. I don't know who was paying the electric bill, but it's just stuff like that makes you question what this administration is doing and providing for the safety and security of the American people. If I lived in Fresno County, California, I'd be pretty ticked off about that little deal. But anyway, just another one of those things that'll help add to his popularity, I guess.
Well, you talk about that lab today, or over the weekend, or sometime recently. Senator Paul filed paperwork with the DOJ to a formal inquiry and investigation of the criminality of Dr. Fauci and gain of function. That is actually illegal, what he was doing. And have you seen anything or found anything on that?
I haven't really seen that, but I think everybody kind of knows after what we've been through that he didn't necessarily level with Congress when he testified in front of them. He fed us a lot of false information, I think, and so it's just one crazy thing after another. Now then, with the Congress that we have, which the House has a few more Republican conservative members that are beginning to look into this stuff by holding hearings and all of that. And and Rand Paul's been screaming about Fauci been a crook ever since he came on TV about the third time. I think Rand Paul recognized that he wasn't necessarily leveling with us, and so he finally got around to doing something about it. So I don't know. I know everybody's in a hurry to get this done. But this morning they were talking about impeachment. It seems as though there's still some Republican holdouts because they don't think they've got enough information. They want to be absolutely positive. And could be after today, after Devin Archer hearing, they might be a lot more positive than they are now. So we'll see.
Well, and I think, just like what Newt Gingrich said, you have to be. You can't.
Sure.
He was
Yeah.
part of the Clinton
Yep.
impeachment. You cannot go into that thing half-cocked. And you look
Yeah.
at the last impeachment that Trump faced, didn't even follow regular protocol. It didn't go through committees or anything like that. It was just, we're mad because of January 6th and we're going to just impeach this guy.
Yep.
And that's what they did. That is mob mentality, and impeachment is never supposed to be used that way at all. It's supposed to be the way, a very deliberate process. And so what they're doing right now, even though it may seem slow, you have to have a locked down tight case. What the Democrats did the past two times with Trump is not how an impeachment is supposed
That's
to
how
go.
you run a railroad.
Yeah. Yeah. Not how you do it the
Because
right
they had
way.
the votes to do it.
In one house,
Yeah.
and they don't, and Republicans don't have the votes in the Senate to
No.
convict, but you want to make it so locked down. The only one that probably would have happened, no president has ever been impeached and convicted and removed from office. Andrew Johnson was saved by one senator, and that was a Kansas senator who cast a vote. Even though it was still minority, a vast majority of the Senate wanted him gone, but his one vote kept it from being the threshold it needed, and that was Edmund C. Ross from Kansas. You fast forward to Clinton, and the Democrats weren't going to go for that because it was over sex in the White House. I mean, with not his wife. And, you know, they just didn't care. And you think they're going to care on this? I think the American people will care if you show that, if you can prove and tie down that $50 million and the people can see that is not right. But it's not just an accusation. You have to show the records. You have to have the bankers. You have to have all of that. And like you said, this guy today that's going to testify, he behind closed doors, you know, where's this, you know, we need that deep throat, that smoking gun to come out. Now, Nixon, they probably did have the votes in the Senate, but he resigned instead. So, you know, it's just got to be done the right way. And so I don't fault them for taking their time. Do you think that they're taking too much time?
Well, you know, I mean, everybody's very impatient when it comes to this because, you know, I think a lot of us have already decided that, yeah, it needs to be. But I can certainly see where you want to be absolutely perfect and sure and be able to prove every bit of evidence that has been presented. And so, yeah, I think it's going to take some time. And then on the other hand, if he is impeached and he's forced out of office, what do you got coming? I mean, look at the vice president. Do you really? I mean, Joe's been in office now. We know kind of how he's going to operate and how he's, you know, on puppet strings, probably a lot of folks think. But, you know, as for the vice president, my lands, I can't imagine. That'd be a whole new ball game. And so there's a lot of discussion about, do we really want to do that, or we just want to go ahead and ride out the term with the current president and, you know, hope for the best and hope that Congress can get their feet under them enough to stop some of this spending and some of this, you know, all of this stuff that's going on, you know, and maybe they can kind of slow that down and we can survive until, you know, the public decides who they want for, you know, a next president or keep the same one. I can't hardly believe, you know, we'd want to keep the same one because we've been through that. But anyway, you know, what we could end up with could be a whole lot worse than what we got. Now that's hard to imagine. That's a stretch of the imagination for sure. But you know, we have what we have. So I don't know. We'll see. After today, I might give you a different speech tomorrow.
So B, I mean, do you think they should rush into this and just get it going? Do you think that they're doing the right thing, taking some time, making sure that it's going to be a lockdown case? How do you feel about where they're at on it?
I think they're doing the right thing by taking their time, getting all the ducks in a row, so that when you have the case finalized, that it's going to be solid. It's not going to be holes here and holes there where they can't prove it, or somebody's going to cast some doubt that keep it from happening. So I think they'd make it slow and steady and make it right. I think that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and for guys like Adam Schiff who are in there, who ran, you know, that last one, and even though it was a fiasco for them when they had the Mueller hearings, and Mueller said no evidence of any of this stuff that was claimed, you know, and they wanted to get that out there and sell Trump down the river, and they couldn't do it, you know, and that it was a fiasco the way they did. So a phone call, you know, did he tell Zelensky, you ought to look into the Hunter Biden situation? What we know now, that phone call was 100% legit.
That's right.
Somebody should have been looking into that. And, you know, how do you look at that now and say that there was anything wrong with making that request?
Yeah.
Sounded like that was a fair request.
Well, it was kind of the same way on the, you know, on the election thing. You know, be sure that you know what you're approving. You know, be sure that it's, you know, fair and square. I mean, I think Trump had a lot of inside information that we're not aware of, that, you know, he's seen coming down the road, and that's the reason he asked for some of these things to you know, to be looked into further. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the Department of Justice and the FBI used to be. And I say used to be, not anymore. It's all about, you know, protecting the guilty, it appears to me. And, you know, so we'll just have to kind of see how this works out tomorrow and, you know, what they come up with. I'm sure that, you know, it's by 5 o'clock or so we should be hearing some rumblings about what was said and all that, because as we all know, you know, things like that and hearings like that, you know, by various means the word leaks out on who said what. So anyway, but by Wednesday anyway, hopefully they will have a full transcript available for everybody to read. And, you know, that's what's the fun part, is the transparency. You know, it's you know, it's kind of like visiting with the mayor and city manager a little bit ago. You know, it's the transparency that they provide that makes you feel a little bit better about the operation of the city. You know, before I think, you know, for a certain period of time, you always questioned what they were doing, but now then, since they come down here every Monday, you know, I think that's a good thing. It feels you a little more, gives you a little bit of comfort in knowing, you know, what they're thinking or what they're planning or what they're trying to do, and that's the whole deal with this thing with Joe and you know, these committees. It gives us a little bit of hope that they're working on it, you know, and had they not, you know, been as transparent, we would all assume that they're all in the same basket together. So,
This has been the most transparent administration in the
Yeah.
history of the country.
well, the only reason it's been a little bit transparent is because of Republican members of Congress forming the committees and starting to look into it. Do you think they'd have came on TV and said, well, let me tell you what I've been doing here? let me tell you about my bank transfers.
But that's
let
the
me tell
commitment.
you about all my shell companies.
That's the commitment. I do want to share, I think, you know, I think we've talked about it in the past. You know, we know our country is divided. You know, we have some deep divides in the country, and probably to the point that if something doesn't change, we cannot sustain this current path that we're on with
Yep.
with the way that we are. But Ayn Rand, she wrote, she was actually escaped Russia during their revolution, became a United States citizen, and wrote several books, but has been a real champion of freedom and individual liberty. And so she wrote Atlas Shrugged, which I suggest anybody take a look at that. That's, and there's a movie. You can watch it on the movie, but read the book. But looking at her writings, even as bad as things are, there's 5 main points that she's come up, that you can look in her books and come up with that could turn the corner, get us back to where we need to be. But her this number 1 that's been given, and this is reported at Fox News, is pursue a foreign policy of true American self-interest. That sounds a lot like America First, but pursue a foreign policy of true American self-interest. That's her number 1 goal. What do you think about?
Yep.
Should we be putting America first and not every other country's interest above our own?
Well, I think that, you know, the evidence would show that absolutely we should. We can't be farming out our industry to somebody that, should we get in the war, and depending on them to provide us the steel to build the tanks and the airplanes and all of that kind of stuff, you know. You know, I mean, what benefits us is what has made the world a better place. And, you know, but we, under certain controls and regulations and one thing or another, convince the public that, yeah, if we let China or Indonesia or, you know, wherever provide us what we need, they can do it cheaper. Well, now look what that's costing us. You know, it's not only costing us dollars in trying to buy that stuff back if we can get it. It's costing us a lot of dollars in, you know, in lost revenue and lost jobs and that kind of thing. You know, steel industry, you know, auto industry. Look at how massive that used to be. You know, our car auto productions system. Boy, if you landed a job working for one of those, you were pretty much set for a good retirement after working there for 20, 30, 40 years. But now somehow we were convinced that no, we'd be better off to let China produce all of this stuff. And that's what we did because it was cheap.
Well, I think the big mistake we made is if you believe your system's the best and you focus on that, and that's a cornerstone of your foreign policy, then other countries will say, we can't compete until we start having the same kind of freedoms for our people that they have for theirs. And people start voting to say, we have to have the same kind of freedom America has. And I tell you what, you want to stop the stuff coming across the border? Mexico has to be a better country than it is. Guatemala, go down the list on all those, El Salvador, all of those countries down, and Venezuela, they have to be better countries, Brazil. And the way that they do that is that we can't keep coddling and subsidizing them on the foreign market. They have to say, look, they're beating us because they are doing X, Y, Z. We got to do X, Y, Z. But instead, we're trading with communist China and allowing them to imprison their people and use them as slave labor and buying their slave-produced stuff, and no one says a thing about it. You want a cheap phone, so you don't care. But if that was made from the South, if that was made in the South in the 1840s by slave labor, you'd say that's wrong. But if it's made by Asian slave labor, that makes it okay?
Yeah.
If you put America's interests first, the Asian people would say, we can't compete with that kind of living. But as long as we're going to subsidize the trade and do that kind of thing, so B, what do you think about point number 1, pursue a foreign policy of true American self-interest?
I think that's where we should always be. If you don't look out for number 1, you're just going to fall, and that's what the other countries are hoping, that we don't pursue us being number 1. That's the way we should always be living. So we take care of ourselves, be self-sustaining. That's how we survive.
The point number 2 is reverse the anti-intellectual leftist takeover of academia. Reverse the anti-intellectual leftist takeover of academia. They explained as American academia was once heralded as a great global bastion of intellectual freedom. It has since become a highly partisan petri dish of largely anti-American ideology. And so flip this around and B, start with you. So what do you think about, that these people that claim to be in academia, that they're supposed to be the experts, we're supposed to be listening to the expertise and the knowledge, and these people are just anti-intellectual leftists. They're not about intelligence, they're about an agenda-driven socialistic view of the world and pushing that. How do we get back to letting the actual intellectuals have a good exchange of ideas, an open forum where all ideas are welcome to the table?
I think we look back and just think of who we have reading books to our children in certain schools now, and what the agendas that they have with the material we have our kids reading. It tells a lot about where we're at, and we need to get away from that and back to, again, the intellectual books, and not something that shouldn't be even in our libraries in our schools or in our library downtown, available for our children. There's a difference between adult reading and children reading, and I think that's where we need to get back to where we're learning instead of just being entertained. And I think sometimes entertainment's all we're getting in school.
What's your thoughts on the academia being taken over by anti-intellectual?
Well, I mean, we've talked about that a lot here, about the system and the way it's designed and the way that programs are being forced into the school system, and who designed them and to whose benefit and those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, it's a great concern of what they, once they go into that kindergarten class or first grade class, whatever it is, and they start hearing different things than what they should be hearing and learning, then by the time they serve, 12 years or you know, if they go through 4 years of college and they continue to hear that, they're probably more than likely going to believe that. You know, I did see here right quick that Senator Marco Rubio of Florida and Kevin Cramer reintroduced a Protect Equality and Civics Education Act, a bill that would block tax dollars from promoting critical race theory within the Department of Education and guidelines. So right there's got something to do with it.
And that may bring us to this third point. In partisan warfare caused by political pressure groups, say like teachers unions, dividing the nation. And one of the things that Ayn Rand talked about, first of all, you know, you ought to be able to say her name on a college campus and not be ridiculed. But one thing she talked about was that the nation, whether it was Jefferson Hamilton, Jefferson Adams, there were some deep divisions, you know, partisan wise. But one of the things she said is that these different groups, says in a mixed economy, statism takes the form of pressure group warfare, each group fighting for legislation to extort its own advantages by force from all other groups. The degree of statism is a country's political system is the degree to which it breaks up the country into rival gangs and sets men against one another. Does that sound familiar to today? When individual rights are abrogated, that means, you know, oh, well, we're only going to hire this kind of person, or we're trying to solve this kind of issue. So, you know, and so you take rights away from people. When individual rights are abrogated, there is no way to determine who is entitled to what. There is no way to determine the justice of anyone's claims, desires, or interests. The criterion, therefore, reverts to the tribal concept of one's wishes are limited only by the power of one's gang. And this is the tribal warfare that we're seeing in this country. So you got to get away from that, you know. And so the main point is in partisan warfare caused by political pressure groups dividing the nation. They're not looking at the individual and protecting individual rights anymore. On both sides, that used to be some areas of agreement. Now they're saying, no, because this group, you know, and AOC is the queen of it, you know, the divide and conquer, the victimhood, and those kind of things. But what's your thoughts on, you know, we're just falling into gangs as opposed to being one people?
Well, I think we are. I mean, and there's a lot of attempts and a lot of encouragement to provide different entities, you know, different benefits, you know, and to include more and more individuals into that line of thinking. So I think she's exactly right. It's a mentality thing, and it's a, you know, to me, it's a brainwashing kind of thing. You know, that, oh gosh, I got to join that club because it's better. You know, and those guys over there, I used to be a member of, they're all nuts, and now then I'm beginning to get the picture. So that's kind of the way that works.
So B, what's your take on that? The concept that the partisan warfare that's being caused by political pressure groups dividing the nation.
Well, I think that's been going on for a while. I believe that, you know, again, it goes back to with number 2 is that we're being taught that at a very young age of the differences between people, and it's going to cause division as they get older. So, you know, that we used to call what the haves and the have-nots, and that's kind of what they're trying to create, is that this group is better than this group. So let's join that group and make it better. So we need to come together and work to make a better life, and not just this group or that group. So.
Fourth point out of 5 is restore our faith in a just society. You know, Ayn Rand believed that justice was defined by the ability of each person to strive objectively for individual achievement in line with their own capabilities. So, you know, whatever you're good at, go and be the best at whatever you're good at, and good things will happen for you. And that society will allow you to advance as far as you can based on what your ability and capabilities will allow you to do. We've been told today that no, society's working against certain people, that there's nothing you can do, that you were born to be an oppressor or you were born to be oppressed. This goes on to say, this belief has been replaced in recent years by a toxic notion that government can impose a just society from above to appease political pressure to correct injustices, both real and perceived, of the past. Social justice, in other words. Rand saw the crisis coming a half a century ago. She said, quote, "The new theory of justice demands that men counteract the injustice of nature by instituting the most obscenely unthinkable injustices among men." She said this theory included efforts to deprive those favored by nature, talented, smart, creative, of the right to the rewards they produce, and grant to the incompetent, the stupid, the slothful a right to the effortless enjoyment of the rewards they could not produce, could not imagine, and would not know what to do with if they have them. So what do you think about restore our faith in a just society that, look, society is not built to cheat somebody. It's built to give everyone a shot. And those who are, look, let's face it, you got a pretty face, you got a better chance at having some good things happen to you than if you don't. Whether you believe that or not, it's just the absolute truth. And so you penalize or punish someone because they were born that way. Intellectual, someone smart enough to figure something out, they shouldn't be able to be rewarded for that. We'll start with B on this. What's, does society give everyone a fair opportunity? But it's based on what talent and skills and gifts that you bring to the table.
I think a lot of people are stymied because of different things like that. But I still believe that if you have the talent, the ability, you can do whatever you want to do, and you should be able to do what you want to do, and be the best that you can. And being the best you can doesn't always mean you are the best. It's the best that you can be at where you're at. So, but I think you talk about being stymied. I mean, just throw in our Department of Justice right there. That's look how much that thing has stymied people that are trying to do right and do the best they can, and tell the truth, but they're being blocked. So I think yes, we have a lot of stumbling blocks that we have to deal with, and people just need to keep going and try to make it happen.
So does nature win out, and some people are just naturally faster, stronger, or they go to the gym and they work themselves to be better? Other people go to the classroom and work themselves to be better. Other people go to culinary school. Some people go to a trade school. Whatever they're doing, they're going to make the best version of themselves. Is that the way we go forward, or is it no, just because I didn't have a natural skill, ability, talent, or the willingness to go make myself better, I shouldn't be penalized?
Yeah. Well, you got to have a want and a need. And if you want government to be your brain, and do your thinking for you, I think you should have a pretty good idea where you're going to end up. You're going to end up totally dependent on government for everything you eat, drink, think, and that's not the American way. I mean, and different people have different skills, gosh, if you look around, just think about all the opportunities that the college offers out there, from truck driving to welding to auto body to, you name it, there's probably 500 different opportunities out there. But if it was up to government, they wouldn't need to offer any of that because you would depend on them and you wouldn't have to do anything but lay around the house. But that's not the way this system was designed. We were designed to be a production country. We build things and we export them. We've got the ability to do it. But right now the mentality is that, well, I don't know how to do anything and I'm not interested in learning, but I can get a check from the government because I can go down and sign up for unemployment, and then as long as I look for a job for a week or two and get somebody to sign the check, then that'll extend my unemployment insurance. That's the kind of society that they're attempting to build. And I still think out here in rural America we have a really good opportunities available if you want to do it. You can be very successful and whatever you put your mind to. And not everybody is, capable of doing the same thing. I mean, that's the reason God put us on this earth. It takes a, to use that old phrase, it takes a village. Well, it certainly does, because everybody in the village isn't a plumber, or everybody in the village isn't a welder, or everybody in the village doesn't clean out the sewer. There's a variety of them. It takes all of them. And, we've kind of fell behind in our educational system to instill that mentality that, I remember going to school, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? At the age of, 5, 6 years old or something. Well, want to be a fire truck driver, or want to be a policeman, or, I remember there was used to be a highway patrol. As a matter of fact, he's on the list of past Kansas Highway Patrols, Tom Pavunka. I looked that up one day just to see, and he's listed in there as a trooper many years ago, probably back in the 50s, I would say. But he's listed on there as just been one of the Kansas Highway Patrol. But he used to stop by Liberty School out there, and some kids wanted to be like Tom, because he came in wearing a gun and and a fancy uniform and all that. You could be anything you wanted to be. But now then, no, you can't be any of that thing, because you need to be dependent on on government. And that's what's been taught now, that you need to just rely on government for everything. And if you do that, well, good luck.
So here's the final point made from Ayn Rand, that we can learn how to save America and overcome these divides, but pursue moral individualism as the antidote to the growing and deadly collectivism. So pursue moral individualism as the antidote to the growing and deadly collectivism. Said almost all the great political tragedies in history were born from collectivist ideals, especially in the deadly 20th century. The rise of National Socialism in Germany and Marxism in the Soviet Union, China, and other nations around the world caused catastrophic warfare, starvation, and social upheaval at the cost of hundreds of millions of innocent lives. Ayn Rand championed the Enlightenment idea that each of us has a full moral worth and individuality. It's an idea enshrined at the heart of America's life by the Declaration of Independence assertion of every individual's right to pursue happiness, and given its greatest literary expression in Rand's Atlas Shrugged. Ayn Rand's quote was, "It's man's independence, success, prosperity, and happiness that collectivists wish to destroy." They don't believe in the individual, they believe in collectivism. And you look at, that's exactly what happened in Germany. They try to say that it was nationalism. It was not nationalism, it was socialism. That was socialism behind a dictator pushing hate, a message of hate. Communism, Marxism in the Soviet Union and China, and the individual rights that are sacrificed for those to succeed. So how do we get back focused on individual freedom and liberty against these collectivist and tribal efforts that we're seeing today?
Well, I think you got to start in your education system. I mean, and that's, at best, that's probably 20 years off. But that's where you have to start. You have to start teaching these kids about, that last one there about morals. I mean, that's really important, or it should be. It should be on the top of everybody's list, that your morals kind of dictate what you do and where you go, and those kind of things. And starting out with, you don't lie to folks like these guys on TV sitting in Washington. They're proud to get on there and lie to us, and that's not morals. That's certainly not morals. But but I think it starts in the education system. And, there's some other opportunities there available too. I think that Charlie Kirk and that Turning Point USA, I've watched some of his conventions and meetings around a little bit. And he's a young guy. He's probably, I don't know, maybe 30. I don't know whether he's that old or not. but he's got a great following of college-age students that have been able to continue to see the light, and it's just an education program. You know, Hillsdale College is another one. You know, there's a few of them out there that hopefully it don't take 20 years, but for some of these kids, it's going to be 20 years of learning that they learn, you know, what the Bill of Rights and the Constitution really means and really says, and what it can do for you. You know, the other way is, I guess you could say, it's going to be what it's going to do to you if you don't you know, pay attention. I've seen this little thing here. You was talking about that. This is kind of the opposite of what she's talking about, but no doubt she knows what she's talking about because she lived under communist control. And it says, if you don't know who Saul Alinsky is, he was Hillary Clinton's role model. Saul is an admitted Luciferian New World Order architect. Beware the useful idiots. How to Create a Social State by Saul Alinsky. There are 8 levels of control that must be obtained before you are able to create a social state. The first is the most important, health care. Number 2 is poverty. Number 3 is debt. Number 4 is gun control. Number 5 is welfare. Number 6 is education. 7 is religion. And 8 is class welfare. So, you know, that's how you create the the controls of the people. And you know, when you was reading that, I kept looking at this, thinking that what you're saying over there is exactly what he's, the opposite of what he's saying here.
And the only way to reverse that is to get back to the individual freedom and liberty versus the collectivism and the tribalism. But B, thoughts on how you pursue a more individualism to be the antidote to the growing and deadly collectivism?
Well, like Jim said, education is the key. I mean, let's get back to learning what's right, what the morals, the values that we used to thrive on, that made this country great. We need to get back to that. We need to be smart, tell the truth. You know, let's get back to what truth is. I mean, we've become such a society that there's no such thing as truth. You can't tell the truth, the difference between truth and a lie, so people just accept whatever they're told. We need to understand when we're being told something that's either right or wrong, and there's no in between. We can't live in a society where we just accept what everybody says. So we just need to get back to the education, and that's going to take some time to do, but it's possible. We just need to keep stressing that.
Yeah, and the first thing you got to do to make that happen is you've got to get control back in the educational system where individual liberties are again champions, and
Right.
that you champion and reward success and individuality and determination and hard work, as opposed to math is racist.
Yeah.
Everybody don't get an A and everybody don't get a trophy.
Right.
No. But you'll find out what you are good at, and you'll pursue that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what being an individual is all about.
That's right.
Exactly.
Be who you are, and discover that and ride that wave out, you know, the best you can. So I hope that we can do it before it's too late, before the collectivism, you know, it ate up Russia, it ate up Germany, it's eating up China. You know, you don't even have a child in China that you can say is really your family's or yours. If they see something in that child that they think is beneficial to the state, they just take the kid. And you know, they're children of China, not of you as of individuals. You know, they've lost the individual doesn't really exist in China. But it does here, or at least it did, and hopefully we can keep that moving forward. We don't want to end today without sharing with you the Squeaky Clean Car Wash weather report. Today's going to be mostly sunny and hot with a high near 100. Southwest wind 14 to 18 miles per hour. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 74. South wind 10 to 14 miles per hour. Looking ahead to the rest of the week. Tuesday high 103. Wednesday 98. Thursday 96. Friday 95. Looks like some chance of rain later in the week on Friday and Saturday. Saturday, 92, and Sunday, a high of 86. How about that?
I'll be ready.
So that's the news and views you can use on the High Plains Monday, July 31st, 2023. We'll be back with you in the morning on Election Day here in the city of Liberal. Until then, this is Earl with the Leader in Times with Jim Rice and B. Simon saying when you live in Liberal,
Or Trinidad, Colorado.
there is no place like home. Have a great day, everybody.